If someone knocked on your door at 2 in the morning and said they needed help, you'd probably open it. Most people would. That's exactly what I did. And I've spent every night since wishing I hadn't. I was living alone at the time. Small rental house just outside Dayton, Ohio. 2 bedrooms, a garage I never used, a front porch with a screen door that never latched right. It was November, so it got dark early and stayed dark. I'd moved in maybe 4 months before and hadn't really connected with the neighbors yet. You know how it is. You wave, you nod, you mean to introduce yourself, and then life gets in the way. That night I'd gone to bed around 11. Work the next morning, nothing special going on. I remember I'd left the kitchen light on by accident, which I only know because when I woke up, I could see the glow of it under my bedroom door. What woke me up was a knock. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I lay there for a second thinking I'd imagined it. Then it came again. I checked my phone. 2:14 a.m. I got up, went to the hallway, stood there listening. Another knock. And then a voice, a man's voice, low and calm through the door. "Hey, sorry to bother you, I really need some help." If someone's knocking on a stranger's door at 2 in the morning, you did not stay calm. You panic and confuse. But I didn't think about that then. I just heard someone say they needed help and my brain processed it as a person in trouble. I went to the front door. I didn't open it right away, I'll give myself that much. I stood close and asked who was there. He said his name was Ray. Said his car had broken down about a half-mile up the road and his phone was dead. Said he saw my light on and figured someone was awake. His voice was even, almost flat. Not scared. I asked if I could call someone for him. He said yes, that'd be great. If I could just call his brother, that'd be enough. And here's where it went wrong. Here's the moment I keep turning over in my head, the one I can't get away from. I thought, what's the harm? I'll stand at the door, I'll take the number, I'll dial it for him. He waits on the porch, done. I won't even open the screen door all the way, so I cracked the main door, left the screen latched, and I saw him. He was tall, lean, maybe 40, maybe 50, hard to tell. He was wearing a dark jacket, jeans, work boots. His hands were in his jacket pockets, and he was looking at me with this expression that I can only describe as practiced. Like he'd already decided what his face was going to do before I even opened the door. He smiled and said thank you, gave me a number. I stepped back into the hallway, dialed it. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then picked up. A woman's voice. Groggy, half asleep. She said hello. I told her I had a man named Ray at my door who said he needed a ride, that his car broke down. There was a pause, a long one. And then she said very quietly, "Who did you say?" I said Ray. "That his car broke down." And she said, "I don't know anyone named Ray." I felt it before I understood it. That cold drop in your stomach before your brain catches up. I lowered the phone and looked back toward the front door. He was still on the porch. But the screen door, the one that never latched right, was open. He hadn't come in. He was just holding it open, standing there with one hand on the frame, watching me. I said the number he'd given me was wrong. He nodded slowly. Like that wasn't news to him, like he already knew. Then he said, and I remember every single word, "That's all right. I don't actually need a phone." I slammed the main door shut, threw the deadbolt. I stood in the hallway with my heart hammering and I listened. No sound from outside, no footsteps leaving. I called 911, whispered the situation, gave my address. The dispatcher told me to stay inside, stay away from the windows, stay on the line. She said a unit would be there in 8 minutes. I went to my bedroom, grabbed the one thing I had, a baseball bat I'd kept under the bed since college, and I sat on the floor with my back against the wall facing the door. Those 8 minutes were the longest of my life. I sat there and I listened to every sound the house made, every creak, every groan of the walls, and my brain started filling in the rest. The garage I never used. The side window in the kitchen I wasn't sure I'd locked. The back door that sometimes needed a firm push to close properly. I started to realize how many ways into that house there were, and how little I actually knew about any of them. The police arrived in 7 minutes, 2 officers. They walked the perimeter, checked the garage, checked the yard. They found nothing. No one on the porch. No broken down car up the road. One of the officers came in and sat with me for a while. He didn't say much. Just asked me to go through it again, wrote everything down, told me to get my locks checked. Before he left, he said something that didn't comfort me the way he probably intended it to. He said they'd had 2 similar calls in the county over the past 3 weeks. Both times a man matching that description, giving a fake name, asking to use a phone. Both times he disappeared before police arrived. No one ever figured out what he actually wanted. That's the part that stays with me, not the fear in the moment that faded eventually. What never faded was the not knowing. He didn't want a phone call. He told me that himself. So what was the test? What was he looking for? What was he trying to find out about me, about that house, about whether I was alone? I moved out 2 months later. New locks, new city, new place. I check every window before I sleep. I never leave a light on in an empty room. And every time someone knocks at my door after dark, I don't answer it. I just stand there. And I wait to find out if they'll go away. Most of the time, they do. Most people think the scariest moment of their life will happen somewhere dangerous. A dark alley, a bad neighborhood, somewhere they shouldn't have been. Mine happened at my own front door. I'd been living in the same house in rural Indiana for about 3 years. Small town. The kind of place where you know your neighbors by name, where people wave at you from their driveways, where nothing really happens. That's what I liked about it. After years of city noise and city stress, I wanted quiet. I wanted simple. And for 3 years, simple is exactly what I got, until a Monday night in September. I remember it was a Monday because I'd just gotten back from my weekly grocery run. I had bags on both arms, my keys in my mouth, and I was trying to get the front door open without dropping anything. Normal life. I got inside, set everything down on the kitchen counter and started putting things away. That's when I heard a knock. 4 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. I checked the time on the microwave. 8:47 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. I hadn't ordered anything. And nobody in my life just showed up unannounced, especially not at night. I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch. He looked like he was in his mid-40s. Jacket, jeans, nothing obviously wrong about him. He wasn't acting erratic. He was just standing there, hands at his sides, looking straight ahead. I didn't recognize him, not even slightly. I didn't open the door, I just spoke through it. "Can I help you?" He said he was looking for someone. A woman named Patricia. Said she used to live here, that she was a family member and he was trying to track her down. Something about the way he said it felt rehearsed, like he'd said those words before. Not to me, but in general. I told him I'd been living here for 3 years and I didn't know any Patricia. I told him he probably had the wrong address. He nodded slowly, said he was sorry for bothering me, and then he just stood there. He didn't leave. I waited. Maybe 10-15 seconds, still there. "Is there something else I can help you with?" I asked. He said, "Do you mind if I use your phone? Mine died and my car broke down about a mile up the road." And here's the thing, under different circumstances, that's a reasonable request. People have car trouble. People need help. I'd probably made that face myself, the one where you feel guilty for not helping. But everything in my body was telling me not to open that door. I told him there was a gas station about 2 miles east, that he could walk there and they'd help him. I told him I was sorry, but I wasn't comfortable letting a stranger in. He said he understood. He thanked me. And then he walked off the porch. I let out a long breath. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself he was probably exactly what he said he was. A guy with bad luck and a dead phone, knocking on a stranger's door. I went back to the kitchen, but I couldn't shake it. I kept replaying the way he just stood there after I'd told him he had the wrong house. That pause, that stillness. I pulled up my phone and called my neighbor Gary. Gary's a retired sheriff's deputy, lives about a quarter mile down the road. I'd had his number for years but never really needed it for anything serious. I told him what happened, described the man. Jacket, jeans, mid-40s, short hair. Gary got quiet for a second. Then he said, "Did you open the door?" "No," I said. He said, "Good, stay inside, I'm going to make a call." He hung up before I could ask what he meant. I locked my back door. I checked every window on the ground floor. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark because for some reason it felt safer to not be visible. 20 minutes later, Gary was calling me back. He told me to look up a name. I won't say the exact name here, but when I searched it, a news article came up. A man from 2 counties over. There'd been a home invasion about 8 months before. The way he'd gotten in, he'd knocked on the door, told the homeowner his car broke down, asked to use the phone. The homeowner let him in. I sat on my kitchen floor and just stared at my phone. The photo in the article wasn't great. Grainy, but the description matched. Mid-40s, dark jacket, short hair. Gary called the sheriff's department that night. They sent a car to drive through the area. They didn't find anyone matching the description. They never confirmed whether it was the same man from the article. The investigation was still open. I still live in that house but put a camera on my front porch the week after it happened. And I never feel guilty anymore for not opening the door. Because the man who knocked on mine that Monday night knew exactly what he was doing. This happened about 3 years ago, when I was living alone in a small rental house just outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Single story, 2 bedrooms, a long gravel driveway, and neighbors far enough away that you couldn't hear them if you screamed. I didn't think about that last part much back then. I do now. It was a Thursday night in October. I'd gotten home from work around 7, made dinner, and settled in for the night. The kind of evening where nothing is supposed to happen. The kind where you're already half asleep on the couch by 9. That's when I heard the knock. 3 slow knocks. The kind of knock that sounds like whoever's on the other side knows you're home and is completely comfortable waiting. I sat up and muted the TV. It was almost 10 o'clock at night. I just sat there for a second, telling myself it was probably a neighbor, probably nothing. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch. He looked to be in his mid-40s maybe. Average height, dark jacket, hands in his pockets. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking off to the side, toward the edge of my porch, almost like he wasn't paying attention. Like he'd knocked and then just drifted somewhere else in his own head. I didn't recognize him, not even slightly. I didn't open the door. I asked through it who he was and what he needed. He turned his face toward the door slowly, and then he smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a nervous smile, just this flat, wide expression that didn't reach his eyes at all, and he said, "I think I have the wrong house. Sorry to bother you." And then he just stood there. He didn't leave. He said he had the wrong house and then stood on my porch like he was waiting for something. I asked him again if I could help him. He said, "No, I don't think so," and finally stepped off the porch and started walking down my driveway toward the road. I watched through the peephole until he was out of sight. Then I stood in my hallway for a full 2 minutes, trying to figure out why that interaction felt so wrong. I convinced myself I was overreacting. People get lost. People knock on wrong doors. I checked the locks, went to bed, and told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. The next evening, I pulled into my driveway after work and noticed something on my front door. A small white sticker about the size of a quarter stuck right below the door handle. I almost missed it. It was a plain white circle, no writing, nothing on it. Just a small white sticker placed carefully, deliberately, on the exterior of my door. I stood there staring at it for a long moment. Then I peeled it off and went inside. I didn't sleep much that night. The following morning I mentioned it to my coworker, a guy named Derek who'd grown up in that area his whole life. I described the sticker and he went quiet for a second. Then he told me he'd heard of something like that. People who scope out houses, looking for ones where a single person lives, where the layout looks easy, where someone seems like they're alone and on a routine. They mark the door. Come back later when they're ready. I told myself Derek was just being paranoid. I told myself a lot of things that week that turned out to be wrong. 4 days after the knock, I came home and the back door was unlocked. I always lock that door. Always. It's muscle memory at that point, the same way you check your pockets for your keys. But that night, I grabbed the handle out of habit to confirm it was locked before I went in through the front, and the handle turned. The door swung open an inch before I caught it. I stood in my backyard in the cold and did not go inside. I called the police from my car. 2 officers walked the house and found nothing. No signs of forced entry, nothing taken, nothing disturbed. They told me I probably just forgot to lock it. One of them said it happens more than people think. They were calm and professional and completely unhelpful, and I sat in my car after they left feeling more afraid than I had before they arrived. Because here's the thing, the door hadn't been forced. There was no damage. Either I unlocked it myself without remembering, which I've never done in my life, or someone had a key. And the only way someone had a key was if they'd gotten it made from mine at some point, or if the landlord had given it to someone, or if the previous tenant never returned theirs. I called my landlord. He said the locks had never been changed between tenants. I had the locks changed the next morning. I bought a camera for the front door. I asked Derek if he'd help me go through the footage every few days just to have a second set of eyes. He said yes without hesitating. Nothing else happened for 2 weeks, and I started to exhale. Then the camera caught something. It was just after 3 in the morning on a Thursday. No motion, no approach. Just the front porch, the driveway, the road in the background. And at the very edge of the frame, across the road, partially behind a tree, a shape. A man standing completely still, facing the house. He was there in the 3:07 clip. He was gone by 3:09. 2 minutes. Standing in the dark across the road, staring at my house in the middle of the night, and then gone. I moved out 3 weeks later, broke my lease, paid the fee, and didn't look back. My landlord was annoyed. I didn't care. Some situations you explain your way through, and some situations you just leave, and that was one where leaving was the only thing that made sense. I never found out who that man was. I never found out if the sticker meant what Derek said it meant. I never found out how the back door ended up unlocked or whether anyone was ever actually inside my house. And that's the part that never goes away. Not knowing. Living in that space between probably nothing and what if it wasn't. I lock my doors every night. I check them twice. I have cameras on every entry point of the house I live in now. If these stories kept you up tonight, hit that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next horror story. And let me know in the comments, would you have opened the door? Stay safe. Stay aware. I'll see you in the next one.